So welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews. I'm Matthew Rolland, and this is for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. And my guest today, well, I'm super excited to welcome Shaun Williamson. Thank you, Shaun, for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Hello, Matthew.
Now, obviously, life as we know it at the moment is very strange. How have you been coping with the strange situation we find ourselves in at the moment?
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, in between acting jobs, what I do is I do a lot of cabaret, stand-up and singing. And this is at festivals, P&O cruises, Warner's hotels, holiday camps, anywhere that will have me, really. And of course, they were the first things to go. And I don't know when anyone's going to let 25,000 people back in a field again, let alone 1,000 people in a theatre. So the pantomime went as well. So I'm luckier than a lot of performers. I mean, you can imagine being a West End performer, you know, and just having a mortgage on your first flat, and then suddenly, not only is all your work cancelled, but you don't even qualify for furlough. You know, it was an absolute insult, really. But it's one of those things. I honestly don't know how they couldn't take 3 years of books from performers and calculate 80% of the total. You know, it's not rocket science, but there you go. So yeah, it is a weird and wonderful time for the arts. We hear some pantos are going ahead. They've been funded by the National Lottery. They're very lucky. I'm very jealous because mine doesn't come under that company. So yeah, it's just a matter of getting through it. All I'm saying to my friends is just get through 2021 and pay your tax, because in 2022 you won't have any tax to pay. You know what I mean? And it'll all be gravy, really. So we just got to get through 2021. That's all I can say. We're expecting. We're taping this on a Monday, aren't we? So we're expecting more lockdowns to happen. Who knows what's going to happen? I could get a job next year in a musical. And put 22 weeks worth of work in my diary, and you get another spike of coronavirus and it'll all get cancelled. So, which is what, I know we're going to talk about it later, which is what, you know, which is why I'm so grateful that I had the book to keep me busy, and maybe I can get a second one out of it, you know. So at least that's something you can do while locked down, you know.
I mean, obviously, back in March, when the whole country went into the first lockdown, I mean, for you, obviously, suddenly no work, just life completely changed. In the early days, what were you doing to keep yourself occupied when we were all stuck at home?
Well, luckily, I still had some writing to do, and I still had to do the editing. There's the proofreading. There's all sorts of things to do when you've got a book. But to be honest, I didn't know it was going to go on this long. Nobody did. So I really didn't mind March and April. I thought it was rather lovely. You know, no planes in the sky, no traffic on the road, people being courteous to each other when you're out walking. I thought it was really quite pleasant, to be honest. And it was only when I lost my panto that the alarm bell started ringing because of paying tax in January. So, no, the first few months I really didn't mind. I'm a loner anyway. I love quizzing, reading. I love my wife. Luckily, there was a bonus, and I've got a pub in my house. So the first 6 to 8 weeks really didn't bother me at all.
And I think also the other thing is when you've got stuff that you can do, like work from home, i.e., you know, you're finishing off your book, it kind of makes it easier because you've got something to focus on. Whereas the people that obviously weren't able to work but couldn't do work from home, those are the sort of people that really struggle, because it's like, well, what do I do with myself? I'm sort of a bit lost, really.
Yeah, and yeah, I can imagine it driving people up the wall, you know, of any job that you do. But obviously, I can only talk on behalf of the performing arts industry, and obviously, if you've got young actors and actresses who can't sing, dance, and act, they must have been going absolutely mad, you know. And they all ended up working for supermarkets, you know what I mean? And apparently, our jobs are unviable, and we all have to retrain, according to Mr. Sunak. So there we go.
And the other thing, of course, is it gave us a newfound respect for our, you know, National Health Service, the NHS, who do an amazing job. I mean, what were your thoughts of, obviously, you know, their continued work and you know, the amazing job they do?
I thought anybody who was on the front line in a hospital did an absolutely amazing job, and obviously we were out there on a Thursday night, you know, clapping our hands for them, and they were extraordinary, and it did remind us every now and again. It's good to remind yourself how important our NHS is, and it is the envy of the world, you know, particularly in countries like America, we have to pay for everything. It's just sad that it impacted on normal GPs' work, who I do admire, but A lot of people were let down as a result of, I suppose, everything going over to fight coronavirus. A lot of people got left behind and weren't diagnosed with cancer and weren't diagnosed with this and that, and some of them are going to die now. So I just wish every element of the NHS had worked as hard and as diligently as the front line in the hospital did.
Now, one of the things that has kept you entertained during lockdown, and I actually earlier on in the series spoke to both Anne Hegarty and Shaun Wallace, who are, of course,
Right.
chasers.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, something that you're a big fan of, and I didn't realise this until quite recently, you're a big quizzer. So how did you get into that?
Well, years ago, I got my first Trivial Pursuit set in 1985, and my parents might as well have given me ketamine. It really got me. I thought, yeah, this is great. Suddenly you really care about, what's the third longest river in the world and all this sort of thing, So after that, I joined a pub quiz team, and that was great. And then when I got into EastEnders, I had a young family, I didn't really have time to do it. So the main way that I quizzed after that was because of EastEnders. I managed to get onto all these wonderful spin-offs from television shows like Celebrity Chase and Celebrity Mastermind and Pointless Celebrities and all that sort of thing. And I was lucky enough to do Celebrity Mastermind. It was only the second ever episode of it. I think Charlie Higson won the first one. My subject was Richard Burton, the Welsh actor. Because I always had a thing about him, I was a real massive fan and of his life story as well, because he fought his way up from poverty, And I thought, when I was stacking shelves at Safeways, who are now Morrison's, I thought, yeah, I'm gonna be Richard Burton. The irony is I became Barry from EastEnders. But if you don't aim somewhere, you don't get anywhere. You know what I mean? So I was lucky enough to win that, and I was sitting next to Anthony Worrell Thompson, the chef, and he went, "I'm Richard Burton's godson." Oh, that's got to be a lucky omen. David Blunkett was on the show. Excuse me, doing Harry Potter. That was his subject. Weird. And I remember I had to help David to his chair because there was a sharp drop in front of the seat, and they didn't even want to trust the guide dog. So I was more nervous about that than the actual quiz. But I managed to win that, so I was lucky. And then Celebrity Chase, we got the 64 grand out of the building. We managed to beat Mark Labatt, which is incredible. And then Pointless, which is my favourite. I've won it 4 times. I've been very lucky on every occasion. I've won 3 jackpots and got 4 trophies. And I just love doing it. I think I'm a bit sad in that, when you get a special celebrity edition, people come along for the night. They want to get their face on telly and have a laugh. I'm the only saddo who desperately wants to win, really.
I mean, one of the things I asked when I was speaking to Shaun Wallace is how does he retain all that information? And one of the things he said is that you've got to have a keen interest in it in the first place, because you're never going to remember it if you're not interested. So no. you must have to have a wide variety of interests when you do the quizzing.
Well, there are certain things that you can learn that will never change. There's prime ministers, kings, queens, It's not even like capital cities and countries. They'll change their names, particularly in Africa, all the time. But there's certain lists that you can get cracking on with that will never change. I'm really weak on mathematics, chemistry. It's like I love biology, but I didn't like chemistry because all these funny little symbols started coming in. Do you know what I mean? Had no retention of mathematical, anything to do with numbers, I find cold. And I mean, anyone who loves science will totally tell me the opposite. But people I can remember, Abraham Lincoln, and facts about anybody, history, English literature. I loved English lit and not English language, because English language isn't about people. English lit is. So Shaun is right, basically. That's the long-winded point I'm trying to make, in that I still struggle on science, nature, and anything to do with numbers. Basic things I don't know. What chemical elements make up so and so. So in my book, I went to meet a memory grandmaster called Mark Shannon. And Mark Shannon won the title of grandmaster. He memorized 6 packs of cards, shuffled 6 packs of cards, pi to something like 2,000 numbers or something. I don't know. He memorized these incredible things. So he taught me about memory palaces, used by Sherlock Holmes. You'll see Benedict Cumberbatch go, "I'm going into my memory palace." And basically what that is, for anyone who doesn't know, is this goes way back to the ancient Greek and Roman times, whereas these old boys would make these speeches for like 2 hours, these famous orators, So they needed visual clues around them to remind them of the next chunk that they were going to say, or they needed mental clues in their head. So a memory palace, I said to Mark Shannon, I want to learn the periodic table because it's something I know nothing about. So he started off, right, imagine you've got bombs on your feet, balloons tied to your knees, mobile phones strapped to your thighs, and there's straight away you've got hydrogen, helium, lithium, you see? And it went on and on up the, imagine a car being driven into your chest, that's carbon, and then number 10 is neon. And by the time I'd left the room, after an hour and a half, I knew the first 30. And then by placing objects around this very office, I got up to 66. You see what I mean?
That's so impressive. I mean, it's something that I wouldn't even be. I don't think I'd even be able to start doing things like that. So you must be quite proud of being able to do these sort of achievements, really.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was worried before I went into the book. I was worried that actually, you have to do certain things or achieve certain things, otherwise the book is meaningless. And in the early days, I mean, I joined the Grand Prix League circuit. So on the first Saturday of every month in venues up and down the country, it's like a school exam. You turn your quiz paper at 11:30, you turn your phone off, and at 1 o'clock you have to put your pen down, and then you swap papers and mark each other's papers. And then all the scores are collated in, and later that night you'll see how you got on in a league table. So the first Saturday I went along to a pub called the Unicorn in Canterbury, and I came 134th out of 177. I thought, right, I've got more work to do than I thought. I didn't recognise a picture of Greta Thunberg. I didn't recognise a picture of, there's a female footballer called Ada Hegerberg. She went up to win an award. I asked her to twerk. Do you remember all that stuff?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, who else is going to know this? Everyone else in the room knew it, because as well as learning your lists, like I said, about prime ministers, kings and queens or whatever, they'll also put in lots of current affairs. So you've got to read up on your papers every day. So I read a broadsheet and a red top, unashamedly, because you've got to know what's going on. So I gradually chipped away at all these things, and gradually improved. And just before lockdown, I think I was 59th out of 180.
That's
amazing.
So
it was all going in the right direction. And the people above me were all people like Pat Gibson, Kevin Ashman from Eggheads, and Paul Sinner and Anne Hegarty, all people like that, Jenny Ryan. So I was making inroads into the top 50, and I was quite proud of that. But then lockdown sort of put the kibosh on it, really,
So how did the book come about? How did you come up with the idea of writing and releasing this book?
So, as I said, I'd always fancied my old muck as a quizzer, perhaps thinking I was better than I was. So I was in my local pub. No, I was Al Murray's brainy barman on Al Murray's Great British Pub Quiz. It was on the Discovery Channel for 20 weeks. And there was a round where it called Beat the Barman, where one of each team will come out in turn and say it's African countries. They'd lower the old lights to a mastermind type lighting state. African countries, starting with the person in the pub team. So it'd ring the bell, Egypt, Morocco, Libya, Mali, and it's whoever bottled it first or just couldn't think of one. And I did really well, I think I got 23 out of 30 at the end of the run, But this day I got them both horribly wrong, and one of them was chemical elements. And Al said, I want you to name metallic chemical elements. I'd learned every element, but I hadn't learned whether they were gases or whether they were metals. So this was a basic mistake that I'd made, and I lost to this guy. And then the second round was about football. I didn't listen properly to the question. I got that wrong as well. So I had a bit of a mini meltdown. And then 2 months later, I was in my local pub, and my landlord, Fred, when he's had a quiz that I couldn't attend, he'd read the questions out to me the next day, all the tough ones. So he read me this question. I got it right. He went, who is the only performing artist to have had top 20 hits in the UK charts in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and noughties?
Oh.
There is only one. He's always very prominent at Christmas.
Oh, is it Sir Cliff?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, you're I'm not being condescending. You're younger, so you've got an excuse to take a while to think about that. But I've grown up with the bloke, It was the easiest question ever, and I got it wrong. Tom Jones didn't have a hit until the 60s. Shirley Bassey's long stopped having hits. So there was only one answer, really, that could have been. So I thought, well, this is ridiculous. What is it? Am I getting old? Am I drinking too much at night? That was a basic question, and I blew it. So I thought, all right, I'll give a year, right? Let's give a year, 1 year, and plunge yourself into this world of quizzing and see how good you can become, or how much you can improve and all this sort of thing. I very quickly learned I was never going to trouble people like Kevin Ashman and Pat Gibson. They've devoted large chunks of their life to this, and you can't just waltz in and challenge them. So it took the pressure off, because then it was just a personal journey. So it was just like, let's see how much I can improve. And if I suddenly start leapfrogging better players than me, that's amazing. And towards the end I was. But so it was just a personal improvement journey, really, rather than, I started off, I'm going to win the World Quiz Championship. It's an impossibility. The broadness of the subjects of world quizzing, you've got to know about, Indonesian mating dances and, Slovakian instruments. It's just extraordinary, the breadth of knowledge you have to have. So the only thing that lockdown ruined really was I was going to compare how I'd got on from the first World Championships, where I come up 891st out of 2,500, but most of them were doing it in a second language. I was going to compare myself to a year later, and of course it got cancelled. So that was the only thing it ruined. What lockdown didn't ruin was that suddenly everybody was quizzing, because there were very few other leisure options, So families were reuniting through Zoom quizzes, and there were quizzes everywhere, extra quiz segments in newspapers. So that was great, because suddenly it vindicated my suspicion that we're a nation of quizzers, or certainly at least half of us are. So that was good. That's the only good thing that came out of lockdown, really.
I mean, were you getting invited to quizzes, to take part in people's quizzes a lot? Did you have to sort of turn people down, or were you trying to do as many as possible?
No, I did my own. on a YouTube channel for quizzing.tv, and they're the people who also run the World Championships and the British Championships and the thing. So we were getting people getting up at 7 a.m. in New Zealand, 5 a.m. in the Philippines, 5 a.m. in Japan. It was amazing, people in New Zealand, Kenya, USA. It was incredible. So it was truly an international quiz. It's great,
Now, obviously, we must talk a bit about one of the roles that obviously everyone will remember you for, and that was, of course, Barry on EastEnders. And he kind of still lives on, although he's obviously no longer with us on the show. People still talk about him. Obviously, Ricky Gervais brought him into extras, so you must love the fact that he's still talked about so much to this day.
Yeah, I do. I was very lucky in that I think Barry's popularity came from the fact that in what can be a very dark show, and let's face it, they've had some very dark storylines recently, I was the comic relief, myself and probably Dean Gaffney and probably June Brown, Dot. There wasn't much comedy in it, and what there was, they gave to me, so people just identified with that. And he was a lovable loser, really. I mean, he was always trying it. He had a big heart, but it just never quite happen for poor old Barry, really. I think a lot of people identified with that. Also, I was lucky that at the time when I joined, there was only 4 channels. I think Channel 5 was just coming out. So, we get 15 million people, we get 12 million on a bog standard Tuesday when nothing was happening. If there was a big thing happened, you get 20 million. I think when I pushed off the cliff, I got about 18 million. When I got married on Millennium Eve, it was a double wedding. Tamsin Althwaite married Ian Bill Coach. We got 20 million, so that's a lot of fan base to carry on, to after EastEnders. But when you leave a soap, you still need to keep the ball in there. Otherwise, people think you're a one-trick pony, and that's where Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant came in. Apparently, they liked the character of Barry, and they said, "Look, you're going to get the Mickey taken, but we all are." Do you know what I mean? I said, "Well, who's in it?" They said, "Ben Stiller, Kate Winslet, Samuel L. Jackson." I went, "Well, I'm in." I'm in.
You couldn't not join that lineup.
No, exactly, Daniel. And the first series, I think I was mainly just in the office with Stephen, which was great. But I thought, oh well, that was fun. When the second series dropped on the mat, I was out of the office in scenes with David Bowie. It was incredible. And then we did a lovely Christmas special. And then I thought, well, that was fun. Then they come up with a series called Life's Too Short with Warwick Davis. And I was in that, and I went out on tour in a cabaret act with Les Dennis and Cheggers, bless him. And then they put me in The Invention of Lying. So I owe them so much.
And I've never sort of had the pleasure of speaking with Ricky, but he always comes across as such a down-to-earth guy who is just such a talent. So working with people like that, you must learn new things, and you're sort of, because obviously that's the joy of what you do, is you're in a profession where you're always learning, you're always soaking in new things.
Yeah, I think the main thing I learned was that they came on set immaculately prepared. I mean, even though, have you seen the outtakes where Ricky laughs and ruins
Yeah.
scenes, then after seeing to Patrick Stewart 26 takes? They still finish early because they're prepared. They've done their homework. They know what they want, because it's got this improvisational quality about it. That was fun. They said, if you can think of a line that's better than ours, just come out with it. And I did on occasions, and that was a great boost when they both started laughing and said, look, let's go again, but keep that line. And it was wonderful. I remember a scene with a muffin. I sort of made it up, and they liked that. So yeah, it was great. That was a real nod of acceptance, if they loved your improvisation. So yeah, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful learning experience, and probably a career highlight, really, I should think.
I mean, were you disappointed that Barry was killed off in the end, or do you think that was kind of good for you because it meant that you could, kind of move on a bit with your career? I mean, what was your thought process when they said he was going to die?
So the whole story, then, very quickly. I left drama school when I was 30, which is late, but it doesn't matter because you don't have to retire. All you got to do is outlive everyone else, and you still carry on working. So by the time I got straight into EastEnders, really, I did a bit in the Bill and London's Burning, but I got straight into EastEnders. So after 10 years, it's all I'd done. And it's not like now where they'll let you go off to do Strictly Come Dancing while you're still in the show, or go off to the jungle and then come back to us. That didn't happen. They were very generous in letting me do cabarets, but not other filming stuff, apart from panel shows. So I thought, I just want to do something. I want to do anything, So what I did, I booked a pantomime that sort of meant I was working right up to my contract renewal, but I knew that they wanted me to carry on there. Okay. So I was hoping that they'd be able to work around it, but I think they saw that as a bit of arrogance and decided to cut the story off early and kill poor Barry off, which was regrettable. But I know there's certain years, I've had some very good years since I left, but there's certain years when I can't think of anything worse than sitting around hoping the phone would go for an invite to go back and do Barry. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. At least you now know that chapter's finished, and you can prepare for new and exciting projects when they come up.
Exactly. I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting around hoping to get the call to. It was a wonderful 10 years of my life. I look back on it fondly, and that's that. And then we all move on. I think there's always going to be a degree of typecasting, purely because so many people watched it, and of course my involvement with Ricky and Stephen playing the same character. So you've typecast yourself. I've been lucky. I've done all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff since I've left. But I always say I know what being Barry's given me because I've had it, but I'll never know what it's cost me because I haven't been offered it.
Now, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You've been a fantastic guest. Before we go, though, are there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who is currently stuck in hospital at the moment, or anyone watching this online?
Yeah, just hi everybody, and I just hope, particularly if you're in hospital, just try and keep your chin up and smiling, because I know it's a very stressful time, particularly with what's going on. But we know the hospitals are fantastic, and they keep them as clean as they possibly can, and disinfected as far as they possibly can. So I just hope, please keep smiling, and I hope your stay in hospital is as short as possible.
Thank you so much, Shaun. It's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, keep safe. The book's out now, so people should go and buy it. But yeah, thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Cheers. All the best.